G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. Ukraine war update for the 18th of May 2026. There was a massive drone strike on Ukraine today. Hundreds of drones across Ukraine made it through Ukrainian air defences, inflicting a lot of damage on Ukraine, but in accordance with Ukrainian law, none of that happened. Yes, the usual propaganda has been rolled out in response to Russia's drone and missile strikes, which continue, by the way. They are still ongoing. They have reached 500 and are still going. They've started 19 hours ago when they hit Odessa, and since then they have struck many other places, including multiple strikes on Dnipro. However, the reported strikes on Kharkiv by Russia have not been reported by Ukrainian sources, nor have many of the strikes on Ukraine's capital, Kiev. But Kyiv has been hit, confirmed hit. Now, in accordance with Ukrainian law, they do not tell you what was hit. They do not bring you honest to goodness news. And I have to filter through so much just to try and find out what is really going on. Now, according to Ukraine, there were hundreds of clashes today, over 248, 80 of which took place in four of the six fronts. Okay, but it doesn't tell me much more than that. Most Ukrainian bloggers really come up with a lot of creative news, but how can the Russian forces how can this territory be liberated if the Russian forces are fighting Ukraine at London? I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? If all this is meant to have been liberated yesterday, and again, it boggles the mind why people are still listening to most of these Ukrainian bloggers. I do not. It just baffles the mind how ideologically captured people are by Ukraine, that they'll believe anything. Now, there's a war of words going on between Ukraine's generals and Russian generals over Kupiansk. Russia said they're on their way to capturing Kupiansk, and Ukraine responded by saying the Russian army's nowhere near Kupiansk, and then report Russians advancing on Petrorovia. Now, they haven't advanced far here. They've only they're still clashing here and here. The Ukrainians and Russians are clashing at Pacifica. Technically, Kupiansk is not and was not retaken by Russia. Russia says they're on their way to recapturing Kupiansk. It's just, it baffles the mind that adults argue like toddlers sometimes, and they're in positions of power. That's what's really scary. Or how anyone takes Ukraine seriously the way they have to. Oh, no, you're not. The moment Russia says anything, it's like, what are you, 6? Well, don't answer that question, because apparently they are. But I shouldn't be surprised how immature the majority of the world is, and they have a hissy fit constantly every time I bring bad news, you have a hissy fit. It's a war that's gone on for years. There's going to be lots of bad news. If Ukraine was all good news, there wouldn't be 4 years of war. The Russian, I don't get. Even Ukraine admits when on other sites, never on their official news site, but on other sites, Ukraine admits that today Russian forces advanced on Krevny, Dnipro, Mykolaiv, Pavilia, and Novomachovi. Now, that doesn't mean they took those towns. Now, it just means Russian forces have advanced on those towns. And there are going to be clashes again. And there are hundreds of such clashes every day. It was not long ago, and still clashes here. Clashes here. There's still, right? Does not mean Russia's losing or Ukraine is losing. It means the war is ongoing. And yet so many people have a hissy fit yesterday over reporting that Russia leased Su-25s from North Korea, claiming it's Russian disinformation. Like, as if suddenly they're an expert on North Korea and know what North Korea is up to. If North Korea reports that it is leasing aircraft to Russia, what does it matter to you? Why such a visceral reaction? Does anyone know why some people get so upset? Do you think North Korea, who's a long ally of Russia, would lease aircraft to anyone else? North Korea is in the process of neutralizing its relationship, right? Being neutral to South Korea. Now, South Korea has been putting out intelligence warnings for some time that North Korea is increasing its military production and exports to Russia. And these were, until recently, reported by Ukraine. But for some reason, they stopped yesterday. Su-25s was the first time I've not seen the South Korean news agency or the Ukrainian news agency acknowledge that story, even though it was put out by the North Korean and Russian and Chinese, and was independently verified, I think, by in Singapore. So, why are people so upset? There is most days in Ukraine, there is nothing but bad news. It is a war. You're going to constantly get bad news of death and destruction. Yet for some reason, you attack the messenger because you don't like the message. And the thing is, why are you so upset over Su-25s? Is it because they're the most effective weapon on the battlefield right now? That there are more Su-25s in combat service? It's weird, isn't it? That there's more Su-25s in combat service than Russia's latest tank. Which is weird, I know, right? You think Russia... And again, it's weird that Putin would actually come out and talk about cutting production of the T-14. It's almost as if there are people hanging on Putin's word, but I'm not taking Putin's word at it. There does appear reports from other military sources that Russia is having production problems with the T-14, which is why they switched off T-80 and switched over to T-90. They've been upgrading and tinkering with the T-80 for a long time now. I thought, well, why are they upgrading T-56s to T-72s and not T-80s? Well, why T-72s? I think it's because they are competing the various factories against each other, and the higher quality quantity output ratio is determining which factories get production funding for the next round. So because the T14 takes longer to build, they've been getting less funding. That's only a theory, but it does seem to fit. Whereas Ukraine doesn't have this problem because it's T-72. I mean, the Ukrainian T-72, I forget what its designation is now, is predominantly made in Poland by a German company. And they've not changed much over the last 4 years. Same with the Crab, which is again Polish, their mobile artillery. The M777 and many other systems haven't changed. So Russia's playing catch up. And I've been showing you that Russia is playing catch up. But for some reason, now there are some aircraft which are considered good, but no aircraft in the world today can match the F-22 or F-35. Now the Tornado comes close to matching the F-22. However, it seems to bother some people, and it's like, why are you so upset? The Ukrainians are using Su-25s as well, but they are running out of them. Now, I don't know what production they have left of Soviet-era equipment. A lot of that's secret. A lot of them have been moved out of Ukraine to Poland and other countries. Romania seems very silent, even though allegedly factories were moved to out of Ukraine. Now, that doesn't mean Ukraine is devoid of industry. It's spread out. It has a lot of industry, and a lot of industry in various towns, and that's where Russia is targeting. But most of these places Russia targets are final assembly points or distribution hubs. I know Russia's made threats, which it has not backed up, and that is amusing a lot of people. Now, we don't know what's going on diplomatically behind the scenes, but for now, it appears Ukraine has not met its second round of obligations to release POWs in return for POWs. But every time I believe, Ukraine delays, waits for criticism, particularly from Russian news, and then they'll turn around and say, and then they'll do a prisoner swap, and then show off all the prisoners they got back, and act as if everything's hunky-dory, even though they delayed prisoner swaps. I mean, they delay these childish games that Ukraine plays. Ultimately, they think it's funny, they chuckle at it. Ukrainian bloggers laugh how they upset the Russians, then they stick their fingers in Russian noses. It's rather childish. And the childish reaction of people online, and I notice a lot of them are Ukrainians, so you can go fuck yourself. And I know, someone's getting, every time I use the F-bomb, someone unsubscribes. It's like, wow, you're that fragile. And yeah, a lot of people seem to be that fragile over bad news. And if you're fragile over bad news, like, why are you following a war? Are you hoping, you think Ukraine's victory is your victory just because your grandfather was Ukrainian or something? I don't see any of these sloppy Ukrainians who keep yelling sloppy Ukraine to go to sloppy Ukraine and defend them. You know, Ukraine keeps talking about its 2 million reserves. They're talking about you. And if you're a Ukrainian citizen, they're aimed and have court cases right now aiming to get 2.1 million Ukrainians deported back to Ukraine. But they even admit that 56% of Ukrainians won't come back to Ukraine. What a shock. So, you think a military victory is going to change that? You You think yelling sloppy Ukrainian all day is going to change that? It's like people who yell for their favourite football team. I think most of the time, having played on a field, it's just noise. It drowns out. Doesn't make a difference at the end of the day. Whatever you yell at me is not going to change the outcome of the Ukraine war. And if you haven't figured that out, I really feel sorry for you. I pity the fool who thinks yelling Russian disinformation at me is going to change my mind on reporting on the war or change the fact that Ukraine is not in a very good position, is in a world of hurt, and every day has nothing but bad news. And you think chuckling over deaths of Russians is going to make your life better? Then you're destined for hell. There's no saving you. This channel's brought to you by you, right? I am sponsored by you. I sell coffee cups at Empire of Elves, that is empireofelves.myshopify.com, to try and fund this channel. Running a YouTube channel is not cheap. It takes toll on computers, microphones, headsets. Now, I'm lucky that most news services are not subscription. I'm lucky that most of these maps are not behind paywalls. Some of them are. It is terrifying at times how much disdain people have for someone who's just bringing you the news. I'm not making it, and I'm not cheering either side on, and I think that is what upsets the most people. They want someone to confirm their biases and to cheer them on so they can feel good about themselves. You know what would make you feel good? How about getting a pot plant and taking care of it? How about, I don't know, doing something productive? Like cleaning your room. Because clearly, if you're so upset that I brought a story about Su-25s, you seriously have issues. So I'm going to really upset you and bring you stories about the Russian helicopter. Now, which one is it? This is the Ka-52. Yes, the Alligator. Russia's discount Apache gunship. Which recently got an update to its swivel cannon. 30mm, I believe. And it's got new missiles, the KH-39. As I predicted, with early battlefield losses, helicopters have gone from a strike weapon to a standoff weapon. There is a difference. It's like tanks. Most Russian tanks, they roll up to a designated firing point based on Glozhno's positioning. They type in their little code, get their fire orders, and then they drive back to their base. Most Russian tanks are not crossing the line. I forget what it's officially called, but it's the combat line. That is the line where you are, well, if you're firing on a Ukrainian position, you are in range. But I'm talking about high visibility. Now, there was a recent video that went viral over a Russian tank. I think it was actually back a year ago. Yeah, a Russian tank was caught in the open in the changing battle lines, and it pulverized some earlier, I think they were only T-56s. You haven't seen anything like that in over a year now. The last I saw of a Russian tank charge was 7 tanks in Pomosk. There is an odd number, I know. But the war is changing, and the majority of combat is now drones. And they are launched from forward positions, and the controllers, they sit in bunkers. And the Russians send out helicopters to patrol, and when they get a launch, they try to narrow in on the launch site, and they fire one of these missiles at it. So you have a tit-for-tat going on every day. Some of them are launched from Su-25, some of them from rockets, some of them are rockets launched from vehicles. I believe it's just what is the closest asset, whatever the commanders have in their command, what they want to hit. But as you can see, it's rather grainy. But that town does not look in a good way. And it's about to get worse. Imagine if Russia just did this each and every day. Destroy a couple of houses here and there, occupied by Ukrainian soldiers. The front lines are deserted. As you can see, one missile. Yeah, there's the Ukrainian soldiers.
The precision of modern Russian
Yeah. This is where it gets into propaganda. Ukrainian soldiers in their shorts, I'd be running too. But the propaganda on both sides, come on, it's very thick. Gosh. Now, the reason the KH-39 is a lightweight helicopter-launched air missile, seen operational service since 21 to 22. It's small warhead, long range for a small missile. This is to keep the helicopter out of the range of manpads. It's fast. Now, they've recently extended its range. And even Russian media admits to strike high-value targets, pinpoint, such as armoured vehicles, command points, and fortified structures. For most of the time, it's not hitting fortified structures, but still, there are a lot of fortified structures in Ukraine. Recently, there was an inquiry in Ukraine into the spending of $1.5 billion on fortified structures in Koskovia. And well, admitting that not all bunkers have been reinforced, as a lot of Koskovia, they pretty much sealed and shut down the inquiry. So obviously things are not going well for the Ukrainians, but they are touch wood. I mean, right now, the Russians still have not been able to cross into Koskovia despite all the devastation. Meaning the Ukrainians are still quite capable of inflicting heavy losses on the Russians if they get too close. So even with these systems, they're not making much of a difference. Again, I emphasize, Russia's playing catch up with the West. And I believe if Ukraine was still using the original equipment it started with, they would have lost by now. Without Western equipment, they would be destroyed by now. That Russia is, I believe, pushing, trying to prolong the war now, and so is Ukraine, to see whose economy collapses first, Europe or Russia. Now, I think recently North Korea, India and China met. And not sure if it was this morning Australian time or last night Australian time, but they recently met and did the four-way handshake with Brazil, Russia, China, Brazil and India, did the whole four-way handshake to basically signify that they're going to prop up each other's economies. Now, Russia did issue a statement saying that it's sick and tired of being treated as a junior partner, which is a rare thing for Russian media. But Russian independent media is different from Russian state media, and Russian state media has not responded, nor has China. So it's just one of those things. They let someone blow off a little bit of steam, and then they all move on, right? So you think the Russian economy is going to collapse? Or the Chinese economy is going to collapse? Or Brazil's going to collapse? No. You notice, even though Western factories are moving to India and that, India is still going to Russia and China to do business, still going to Brazil to do business, announcing that it will sell to anybody and everybody. It is playing both sides and remains a member of BRICS. So, yeah, I think the UK is delusional on India right now and the situation in India. And they're the ones, the UK government are the ones putting out anti-Russian propaganda, because you can actually look it up. Modi meets Putin. Modi supports Putin. Xi supports Putin. Those will come up time and time again. Now, yes, there is a thing called strategic ambiguity, where China never gives away its entire position on anything, which has people in the West somehow thinking that, if it's not, if China doesn't say it, they're not doing it. But then when Russia says we're doing this, you call it disinformation. I mean, I don't think people can make up their mind. Russia's attacked over 500 drones and missiles. Now, this was hours ago, and since then there's been more, probably over 100. Depends on different sources. But most of them were, of course, strike drones. They are moving away from the Shahid, but they still have huge stockpiles of the Shahid drone. Up until recently, Iran was putting out, I think, over 1,000. And so, I mean, Russia's bought heaps of drones off Iran. Russia, until recently, and I still think it still is somewhat, propping up the Iranian economy. Yeah, so Ukraine Pravda for the low IQ is Pravda.ua, which means it's Ukrainian, is reporting 80 combat clashes out of 242 on they said 4 fronts. Wait. Provos, Kosovo. Okay. Maybe I misremembered. 3 fronts. Sorry. I really thought when I read the story earlier it was 4. Yeah, I don't mind if you tell me I got something wrong, but just saying disinformation ain't going to win friends and influence people, chuds. However, you think you've owned it, you're really weird. You think it's getting bailout by the IMF is a good thing? No, it's not. Okay, it's the bottom of the barrel. It's just basically... But of course, people don't care when they, but they realise that this is just one big corrupt, where they're propping up failed economies, rewarding failure, perpetuating wars, because somewhere else, someone's making way more money, so the IMF gets their little slice of the pie to give away money to countries that have failed to make sure they stay failures, to reward failure so that others continue to prosper in a rigged market. Now, in a recent update, in the corruption case, several names have come up in corruption case. Olomitsky Shadovko, a long-time friend, Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, great friend of the Ukrainian nation, until he was arrested for corruption. His wife's 2 sons and daughters fled the country. Whereabouts unknown. It's believed to be Israel. His corrupt practices go back 20 years. The most common corrupt practice in Ukraine is overcharging the state for goods and services. But lately, war profiteering, Medich and Firepoint, again, overpricing, supply irregularities in not just drone and missile procurement. Timur Medich on the run, however, leaks of the tapes have surfaced in which Timur is talking with several Ukrainian figures. And despite all this, the Andrew Yemek case does not have his client. He's the lawyer. That means he worked for someone. But there's a corruption that is many have noticed, and Russia's making a point of it that I saw yesterday already, that almost everyone they do not want speaking gets hit with a massive bail package. So Karosky was released after supporters posted 2.7 million bail. Little known what happened to Klemorsky after that. Not much news on Klemorsky after that. Now again, it's like, now he's close to coming up with bail, and they're just sitting in court reading out charges. Now the bail has been increased to 3.2 million. Now this is over 4 properties. Now apparently the only other name mentioned is Olga Bavoga. I haven't been able to find out much about her other than what's here. But apparently she's a fortune teller. It used to be a crime in Ukraine and Russia. I think it's still a crime in Russia to be a fortune teller, although that seems to be circumvented by entertainment, But prosecutors claim that he was in contact with a psychic advisor, and yeah. Don't know exactly if that was a crime in Ukraine or just something that Russia's bringing up, but it's the first time her name's come up that I can recall. Now, leaked documents suggest that Medic was the one who secured the secret financing. So the alleged allegations appear that Yemek knew the money was stolen from state funds, from Firepoint and other drone operators who provided kickbacks to the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, who then distributed the funds, and that Yemek had a stake in these apartments, in which he had 4 under his name, but there's no mention of political opponents. But the fear is that Timur was afraid that if Ukraine's opposition got into power, they'd all be prosecuted. Now, the court has warned that his enemies would prosecute him even worse. So it just tells you that the law in Ukraine is highly subjective. And Russia has does not have the moral high ground on this, no doubt, but to bring into question has embarrassed Europe greatly. They have sent observers to this trial, obviously to try and clean up this mess, because don't forget, they thought they had everything under control. That all they had to do was pin it all on Timu because he ran. No, I think he ran because he was the fall guy. I think he was just a contractor. That the government officials were running the show with Yannick as the lawyer. Now, how much he knew, again, depends on the tapes that we haven't heard yet. Now, whether or not more leak from the court case probably will not change anything. It will continue to be a corrupt country because Europe won't put its foot down. Every time the corruption leads back to overpricing on procurement. You had how many defense ministers have had, how many times has the defense minister fired an assistant for procuring mortar shells that didn't exist, procuring artillery shells that didn't exist, procuring ammunition from the Sudan? And why was that a problem? I don't know. Procuring ammunition from India, what a shock. For some reason, Ukraine's procurement process, again, they procured ammunition and then charged the Ukrainian state a different price. Well, that's how buying and selling works. But apparently, the officials were buying and selling through third countries and third parties. So, yeah, it's obviously they were recipients of kickbacks. But again, half these people who are fired, you never hear of them again. There's no court case, nothing. Now, again, Ukraine fired a lot of drones at Russia. Whether or not how many were destroyed and how many may have made it through, we know some did because Russia's actually reporting that some did. If you notice there, that's the result of the Ukrainian attack on Moscow. The drones exploding, smashing windows, and seems to have peppered the building with projectiles. It's obviously a terror attack, just flying drones into a city and exploding them, full of ball bearings. That's not targeting infrastructure. Yeah, Russia is actually listing out where and when. Well, it's a lot of attacks. You don't have Ukraine listing out these attacks. I'm pointing out the discrepancy in the stories. The list almost looks the same, except for one thing. Where are the debris? Where are the targets? Where's the pictures? Yeah, this is the state of the war. The real state of the war is that along this front, men are dying. And there are a lot of people, millions around the world, who are cheering on Ukraine because they have bloodlust. And that's and my truth, the truths that I bring you are upsetting people. And it's not bothering me that they're upset. Because clearly, they're not the sort of people I'd want to associate with if they want to cheer on war and the death of men because they think it would make their lives better. Because they're the sort of people who would put you on a train and say, so long, because it thinks their lives are going to get better. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Please support the channel. and support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. Thank you to all the support that I've gotten over the years. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video. Bye for now.